Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Kirsty Owens. I'm the State Manager for South Australia at Berkeley, and also have a role as the National Portfolio Manager for the SCTP. So I'm responsible for development of our online presence. Just before we start today's session, I wanted to briefly cover a few housekeeping topics. So today's webinar will be recorded and the link will be sent to you in the next couple of days so that you can feel free to revisit it or share it with some of your colleagues in your office. We also invite your comments and questions throughout the session today. Hopefully you'll be able to see that there is a Q&A chat box on your screen. And I'm joined by Kimberly Maisie today, and she's going to be answering your questions as they come up, as many as she can get to. And if you think of a question for us, just type it in the Q&A box and we'll try to answer those during the session. If we don't get to your questions, we will try and cover off a few at the end of today and follow up with an email after the webinar as well. If you are having any issues with your sound, you might try to disconnect and reconnect. If that still doesn't work, you can try the call-in number that was provided in the audio options on your screen. Today's session does attract CPD and CIP points. A certificate will be emailed to you after the session so that you can claim points for today's presentation on either the NEBA or the ANZIIF websites. It's probably also a good time to mention that today's webinar is being run for members of the Steadfast Broker Network. So if you're not a Steadfast broker, then today's content won't probably be very relevant to you, but please keep an eye out for our next webinar on the 3rd of March, where our National Underwriting Manager will be discussing crime cover under management liability. So we understand that most of you probably already have a working knowledge of the SCTP and are familiar with our General Liability product that's already on the SCTP. So our objective today is just to run you through our latest product offering, which is Professional Indemnity. I'm going to be talking about what you can expect from Berkeley when you're obtaining a quote, when you're binding business, and also interacting with our underwriters. And as I mentioned, answering any questions you might have as we go along. For those of you who might not have dealt with us previously, I'll briefly take you through our value proposition so that you know what to expect when you deal with Berkeley, and then show a few slides on how that has translated into our success with Steadfast brokers over the last 10 years. Then we'll get straight into what the benefits are for you of using the SCTP to place PI insurance with Berkeley. I'll talk a bit about what types of risks we're targeting, what size of risks we're targeting, and how that also compares to our open market offering that we are already writing. As well, what you can expect from us with regards to referrals and declined accounts. I've also included a slide that addresses some of the common questions we've had so far from brokers on what to expect from SCTP PI. We will be trying to answer these questions during the presentation, and we'll cover off any unanswered questions at the end of the day. So moving into the BIA value proposition to kick things off, it's based around 4 key areas that you see here, which are service, expertise, security, and support. So the number one key to our success, we believe, is our fast response times. In addition to that, we want to stress the local business, local broker, local underwriter concept, so that the underwriter you deal with in your state now is the same one who responds to all your referrals on the SCTP and will always be your first point of call with any questions you might have. The business that you do place under the system goes straight to your local underwriter's book so that they have a vested interest in supporting you. The idea here is about automation, not centralization. It's not a replacement for broker or underwriter, and we really believe that has been the key to the success of the system so far. For those of you who do have established relationships with your Berkeley underwriters in your state, you know that they're knowledgeable experts in their field and have high levels of authority delegated to make decisions, which allows us to respond very quickly to you. On security, we are APRA authorised insurer in Australia, but backed by the global strength of a Fortune 500 organisation, the WR Berkeley Corporation. and that gives us an A+ rating with Standard & Poor's and AM Best. And we have been a partner of Steadfast for over 10 years. Finally, all of our claims are handled locally in Australia by our in-house team of 10 insurance claims specialists, and that's headed up by a National Head of Claims, Barbara Stenning. So I mentioned a successful partnership with Steadfast over the last 10 years. And so I just wanted to really quickly share some results from the 2021 insurer study that Steadfast presented to brokers, and more specifically in relation to the two products, public liability and professional indemnity, which we have automated on the Steadfast platform. So our products were rated amongst the most used and came out as actually top 2 providers for both PI and PL. So this slide shows our results for general liability, which was our first offering in the SCTP about 2.5 years ago. And you can see that Steadfast Brokers ranked Berkeley #1 out of 9 insurers for general liability, which is a pretty outstanding result. And in those key performance indicators, for #1, we came out quote turnaround. After that, competitiveness, overall performance, and followed by risk appetite. Now, if we're to look at the same screens for professional indemnity, you'll see that we actually came second out of 9 insurers for PI, and actually the KPIs were the same. So it was #1 quote turnaround, competitiveness, overall performance, and risk appetite. So as I mentioned before, it's really that speed of responding to you that is our key to success. And we're hoping that by joining the SCTP for PI will gain us that #1 spot for PI as well. So that's just briefly partnership with Steadfast. And so now I'll just move on to the benefits of SCTP for PI. So fair bit to cover off on this slide. Our product offering under SCTP, it's fully automated. Firstly, it's an end-to-end offering, and we can write limits of indemnity up to 20 million for professional indemnity. So you can quote, bind, and issue all your documents online in just minutes. Your policy schedules and CFCs, they're all issued within seconds of binding, and you can endorse or cancel at any time. So it really is that full end-to-end system. Even the renewal cycle is completely automated. So renewal terms will be issued 45 days prior to policy expiry, and that happens automatically with little to no underwriter input. We understand it's a considerable benefit, as a lot of feedback we have from brokers is that it's difficult to obtain renewal quotations actually from other insurers in a timely manner and before the expiry date of current policies. So as I mentioned previously, we very much stand by our local broker, local underwriter service standard. So any referral quotes will be responded to within 24 hours. And in fact, for the GL SCT product, our average response time was sitting in around 1 hour. But if you do have any questions about a specific referral, or you even just want to discuss our risk appetite, then you know who you can call in your local state office, the person that you would normally deal with, and you don't need to call any sort of call center or centralized team that's looking after these policies. There's also a reference there to the policy wording. So we released a Steadfast SCTP PI wording in 2021, and that was specifically for this system. So that means you be sure you're getting an updated and market leading wording. So the key takeaways from this slide is that we're targeting premiums under 10,000. So we're very much looking at that smaller end SME business that's less complex and doesn't require too much underwriting intervention. So at this stage, Steadfast have opened up 4 PI product areas for us to quote on, and that is miscellaneous, real estate, accountants, and construction. And I've provided just a short example of some of the occupations that fall under each of those categories. Now, if you've done a bit of PI insurance for your clients previously, you will know that there are a number of additional underwriting questions insurers ask depending on the occupation. And so the great way in which Steadfast Technology have actually structured this product is that there's a base set of questions, and that effectively makes up your miscellaneous occupations. And I had a quick look today. At this point in time, there are about 150 miscellaneous occupations which will auto quote through the system. So that's quite a large number. But when you select one of these other occupation groups, so real estate agent as an example, that'll open up an additional set of underwriting questions. And so they might be, for example, are you a member of the Real Estate Institute, or do you do property management, or property valuation services? So they are very much risk specific to that particular occupation group. And then likewise for an accountant, it might ask questions about how much audit work you do, or do you have an Australian Financial Services license? So all of that is driven off the occupation code that you choose in the very first screen when you start entering your client's information in the SCTP. So if you're having any difficulties deciding which is the right occupation code to pick, I definitely suggest giving your local underwriter a call, because I'm sure that they'd be happy to chat to you about that. And including all the current subtypes that I've mentioned, it brings it to around 190 occupations in all that are auto quoting under the system. It does, however, mean that there are a few PI occupation groups which we would write open market that Steadfast haven't yet included on the SCTP. So an example of these would be IT liability, mortgage brokers, finance brokers and the like. And we hope that they will come in the future once there's enough traction or enough volume going through the SCTP PI. But as you could probably understand, that there are specific questions we would ask for those occupation groups that the system's not providing at this stage. I want to move on to the next slide now, and I think it's an important one to go over, which is the referral process. So I've included a few steps from the SCTP system. I haven't included one of the quote screen, because if you've used the SCTP before, you'd already be very familiar with how this works. But if your quote request has triggered a referral, you can generally expect a response same day. Open market standard is 24 hours, but it tends to be a lot quicker than that. So to draw to your attention, one thing that's different about SPI as opposed to the general liability product, that's the referral process. So under GL, if your risk refers, the system automatically sends all that information that you entered to us in a referral message straight away, and it goes straight to that underwriter that I mentioned previously. Now, PI is slightly different in that there's now an extra step. So if your quote has referred, the first message you'll see is this referral required. It will give you, in most circumstances, it will give you a premium indication, and hopefully you can see in this screen that that's coming about $719. But your underwriter isn't actually receiving any of this information at this stage. You do actually need to physically go back into the quote and refer it to us. I'll provide an example of how you can do that. And you'll see that once you actually refer it physically, then the next step is that you'll see the referred message. And at this stage, all the data is now transferred into our system for review. So I really wanted to share that with you, because when we did run a pilot of this product with a few Steadfast brokers, we actually saw a number of quotes that didn't progress past that referral required stage. And that was a bit of a concern for us, because we are thinking that you might be expecting a response for us and we don't know anything about it yet. So we certainly don't want to let you down, and just wanted to make it clear that there was that extra stage there that you needed to complete. Still sticking with referrals, and I just wanted to also talk about one of the most common referral triggers that we see, which is overtyping the occupation description. Now you can see here that in this particular example, the risk code that was selected was the management consultancy service, which is a very broad business occupation. And I would suggest that if your client was working in that field, that the broad business description is of benefit to you, as long as it covers off all of their activities, of course. So when you enter that occupation code, our rating engine uses that to determine pricing and conditions. If your insured does multiple activities, there is a page further down, further through in the system where you can enter multiple activities. But as soon as you start typing a manual business description here, your account will have to refer so that then underwriter can actually look at what that description is. And of course, we want you to disclose properly what all of your clients' activities are. We're definitely not saying not to do that. However, in this example, and this is a live example, the code of management consultancy service was used and then overtyped with management/business consultant. Now, this caused a referral to an underwriter so that they could determine what was actually entered in that field, because there's no other way for us to do so. And I would argue that, management/business, it's all the same. It's effectively a management consultancy. So the question is, phase described if different from above. If the code covers what they do, leave it. If there is additional activities that you want to include, then that can be done further down in the system. Actually, on the financial details page, there is a section type of work where you can add multiple other areas of work. So for example, management consultant, and then you might add immigration consultancy as well, and then provide a breakdown of the activities between the various services. And all of these will be included on the policy schedule. So unless there is a pressing need, then this is probably not the area to be adding additional information. And I suppose always with PI, there is the question, because the professional business is so key to the risk itself, and the cover provided by the wording is, well, how do you know whether the occupation adequately covers what they do? And of course, we would say speak to a Berkeley underwriter, save their number in speed dial, in fact, because they would be very happy to help you through that. And as I mentioned previously, once the underwriter has reviewed the referral, they'll either approve it within that 24-hour time period, or they might come back to you in some cases and ask for more information. But all that transaction of correspondence is all handled by the SCTP system. So moving on to the declined accounts message, slightly more simple. There's really only two reasons you'll see a declined accounts message from us in the SCTP. One is the not target occupation, and number two there is not target size. So probably goes without saying, not target occupation means the code that you selected is a decline within our auto rating engine. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we don't write the account open market. It only means we don't feel that this is an occupation that we want to write under the automated system. In addition to this, there are also a number of occupations in the Steadfast listing that are actually not relevant to professional indemnity. So I would give you the example of a manufacturer risk. So generally these wouldn't be PI accounts. So as I said, probably best to speak to your underwriter if you're having any difficulties in selecting the right occupation code. Now, I mentioned that we might write the account in open market, but not on the SCTP, and you could ask why we would do that. And the best example I can provide here is a structural engineer. So we do write some structural engineers, very, very few. And when we do, it's incredibly selective, the way we underwrite the risk. So we would be looking at all manner of things, including experience, type of projects, qualifications, history, the list goes on. So due to the nature of the exposures presented, and engineers is a really good example because they are quite complex risks, we generally prefer these to be underwritten by a person, by one of our underwriters. So all is not lost, however. One thing you can do through the system, if you've already entered all the information in and you receive a not target occupation, you can actually print a quote request form. And that's essentially your completed proposal form, which is created from the data that you entered already within the system. So all of that data entry is not gone to waste. You now have a completed proposal form, which you can send to us via the normal means. The other reason is not target size. And I did mention right at the beginning of our presentation that we're really looking at SME business under 10 grand. And the reason for that is that it's this sort of business that can be automated. We really feel that anything over that size should be looked at by an underwriter. So if you receive a not target size, it means that it's rated up at a premium greater than 10 grand. Again, doesn't mean we won't write it in the open market. Send us that quote request form and an underwriter would be happy to look at it for you. So some of the questions that we've already received prior to today's webinar about the system is in regard to minimum premiums. Now, I've given an example of some of the minimum premiums we have for this product. They're obviously base premiums, so charges do apply on top of those. And they're also for miscellaneous professions. So as you probably expect, an architect or an engineer would have a slightly higher minimum than these. I believe from memory, they're starting at about $950 plus charges for a meal. Now, these minimums are exactly the same as what you would receive if you sent the slip into us in open market, but the difference is under the SCTP, you're getting your higher commission. I did also mention earlier the maximum limit available, and that's 20 million under the SCTP. So that is the maximum limit that we can actually offer any one PI policy without reinsurance, additional reinsurance being required. The limit is also exclusive of costs, and that's through the policy wording itself implies that the limit is exclusive. The exception is in architects and engineers. Again, market standard for these occupations is a cost inclusive limit. And so as we have also applied a cost inclusive limit for architects and engineers in SCTP. The SCTP PI policy wording 2021 is available to download on our website. As I mentioned, it was developed specifically for the SCTP PI offering. So it is a current wording. And in regard to commission, 26.5% standard under the system. Now, if you're familiar with SCTP, you would know that you can adjust those commissions downwards if you want to do that to save your client some money. Now, I've talked a lot today about your local underwriters because it was really a point that I wanted to hammer home. So I mentioned it more than a few times today, but here are some of the names of your local underwriters in each state, and hopefully you are familiar with some of these underwriters already, and they are available to answer any risk-related questions you have. I've included also the email addresses. So should you want to send the quote slip to any underwriter for a declined account, then you can send those to the local mailboxes. For SCTP system related issues such as logins and technical queries on the system itself, you do need to refer those through to Steadfast technology. Unfortunately, we don't operate that front end system, so there's very limited assistance we can offer, but we will try and help you out wherever we can on that. You might have also seen that we are running seen online that we're running a competition. So for every new PI policy bound on the SCTP between the launch date, which was the 24th of February, and the 18th of March, we'll go in the running to win an Apple Watch. So if you bind multiple policies, that's multiple entries into the competition. And we'll be announcing that at the Steadfast conference in Adelaide, which is thankfully going ahead this year on the 20th of March. And I can't tell you how much we're looking forward to being able to catch up with a lot of you face to face finally in Adelaide this year. So make sure you come to the Berkeley stand. We always have the best coffee in the marketplace. So come get your fix, and we'll have lots of goodies to hand out as well. So that's the most of the presentation for us today. So I'm just going to cross to Kimberly in the Q&A box to see whether she's got any questions for us.
Not at this stage, no. You must have asked them all.
Excellent, well done. So thanks, everyone. As I mentioned, it's really important here that although we are now transacting electronically with you, we really want to keep that personal touch and try to provide you the best possible user experience online. To that end, we're providing another webinar on the 3rd of March. That's actually going to be on crime cover under management liability and will be presented by Matt McPhee, who's our National Underwriting Manager. And I'm sure that will be a very interesting presentation and very well attended. So make sure you register for that one. On that note, I hope you've enjoyed today. Oh, sorry.
Before you go, Kirsty, yes, there is a question. Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Yes, we can certainly provide you a copy of the presentation after today, not a problem. And we'll also be posting it up on the website. Okay, well, if that's all, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Just a reminder that CPD, CIP certificates, they'll be emailed directly to you in the next day or so. So I'll wrap it up for today unless we have any final questions, and thanks everyone for your time.